Welcome to Wednesday's Words of Wisdom from the farm. And as you know, this farm has been established. The Browns moved in 1876. And the Lambton County history books say that the Browns moved in 1876 into swamp and bush. But they thrived because they were skillful hunters and they lived off the land. Over the years, we've done some hunting. And just recently we had our deer hunt, and it's the yearly deer hunt shotgun. And it was really hard. We lost our leader of the crew. He would be so proud. Chris, you'd be proud. Your son and the crew carried on and honored you. And we actually, through the bad weather and everything, had the most successful hunt we've ever had. Well, I want to tell you a little story about my grandfather. And my grandfather was a guy who he wanted nothing to do with church, Christians. He hated it all. And someday I'll tell the story how there was a transformation that happened in my grandfather, Wilford. And he became late in his life a preacher, one of the top preachers in the area. And actually, he was on his deathbed twice. And the bills, back then you didn't have OHIP, the bills added up. And in fact, they were going to lose the farm. And my dad said they had to come up with $420 within like 2 months. And my dad said that was impossible. I said, well, come on, Dad, you basically work it off. Dad said, but boy, you worked all day for $1. And he said at that time I was working 2 jobs to try to help support the family. And I said, well, Dad, you sell a cow. You sell your herd. Dad said a cow was worth $5. Dad says there was no question, the farm is gone. And my grandfather, who now has had this transformation, kind of like Paul in the Bible, when he was Saul, he was going around and imprisoning and killing Christians. Then he became the greatest preacher and changed his name to Paul. And we read a story about how he actually got shipwrecked, and the most tragic situation actually turned out as they came up to the island of Malta. He actually gave hope to those island people. And in fact, he's gathering up wood, sticks to make a fire to dry off from being shipwrecked. And a viper came out and attached to his hand. And this viper, minutes he's dead. And the town people all watched and hung on every word, and nothing happened to him. And many people accepted the way and had hope that day. My grandfather now had a transformation in his life. He comes out of a church service and he says, boys, come here. The Lord told me we're going to pay for the farm. My dad's like, come on, how are we going to do that? And he says, boys, we're going to shoot foxes. Shoot foxes. My dad says, well, I'd like to know how that does anything. He goes, well, I heard there's a bounty out. See, there was an epidemic of rabies at that time, and the government and the ministry decided to put out a $10 bounty to try to clean up, because foxes were the carriers of rabies. So they wanted to clean up this rabies epidemic to save wildlife. And so my dad says, that sounds great, but where are we going to find him? He said to my grandfather. My grandfather said, listen, son, you're going to get down on your hands and knees and pray, and the Lord's going to lead you right to the spot where those foxes are. My dad said he went to bed that night, and he said he cried out to God. He was so scared because he felt like it was on him, when really it was on God. He felt a peace about going down Oil Springs Line and down by Black Creek and on the bank there. And the next day, that's what they did. And sure enough, they found a hole on that bank right where he felt to go. And it was full. There was a den of foxes. And they got all those foxes. You know, neighbors at that time jeered and mocked and thought it was a big joke what my grandfather and my uncle and my father were doing. But you know what? They needed 42 foxes to pay for the $420 mortgage or going to seize the farm. They shot in 2.5 weeks. they shot 76 foxes. Not only got what they needed, but more. You see, I believe that what we're going through right now, this pandemic, we think is the most terrible thing ever. Wednesday Words of Wisdom would never have happened if this pandemic didn't happen. Reaching out to those in need would have never happened for some of them if we didn't go through this. Believing and trusting in God and our farm being paid for would never have happened unless there was a rabies epidemic. How something so wrong can turn around. 2 weeks ago I did a segment and I talked about how I struggled with suicide. I couldn't believe the personal texts that I received from people saying, that's where I am right now, I needed this today. We don't know when a struggle in life can somehow produce something that we see good out of and God's hand is upon. So today, don't complain about where we're at with this pandemic. Pray that God gives you direction on who to reach out to. And trust in Him. He's going to look after you. And you know the story I told about the 76 fox and paying for the farm? Well, I had to keep this little picture right here. My grandfather, my dad, and my uncle. There is a picture of the foxes. That was one day's hunt. And that picture is up there because we have a farm today because of it. So trust in the Lord and let Him lead you to do what's right in this pandemic. And that has been Wednesday's Words of Wisdom from the farm. Take care.